Now we're live. I was muted. I was watching the stream back the other day and I heard some like click, 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 and I'm like, oh man, when I play the intro, the daggone thing, everybody can hear it. But how are we doing, everybody? I hope you are doing wonderful today. We got a big day. Macro wise. Markets are kind of pumping a little bit, but we got the State of the Union address tonight in the United States. President Trump will be talking to the people. A lot of AI fear. Is AI going to replace absolutely everything? We've got drama within crypto. A big post coming out in 2 days from Zach XBT about an investigation. Who is it? Who is being naughty? I don't know. We're definitely gonna see, guys. But before we get into everything today, I just want to remind you, I am not a financial advisor. Nothing I say is financial advice. And always do your own research. So like I said, I hope everyone is doing wonderful. Another day, another day crying into my microphone about what's going on in the markets. We've got Algorand, some people from Algorand coming up, Alpha Arcade and Lofty. We're going to talk to them at 12:45 Central Standard Time. It's going to be our first interview here on the stream, so I'm very, very excited about that. But before that, let's get into some stuff that's cooking, man. Let's look. Crypto market cap seems to be getting a little bit of a bounce. Okay, seems to be getting a little bit of a bounce, but nothing too drastic. But we're still holding this low that we got a couple weeks ago right here. So we're still holding that, which was right there at 60K. But I want to break this chart down a little deeper and show where I think we may be going now, right? We got to stay fluid in all of this, okay? You can't just have a prediction and never change it, right? We moved a lot quicker than I ever anticipated to the downside, which is the wrong side to go. It's not definitely not where we want to go. But guys, shout out to Blofin. This is the partner of the channel. It's where I do all my trades. We had some trades yesterday. Nothing's ever financial advice, but if you are interested, there is a QR code right there that will get you into Blofin and all that good stuff. But yeah, nothing but good things to say about them over there. But there should also be a link down below pinned everywhere. You should be able to find it. But good morning to everyone. I hope you are doing good. Let me know down in the comments what your most bullish bag is. I've actually found a few new cryptos that I'm really interested in. I'm working on making deep dive videos for you all, and I'll post those on YouTube and X, obviously, for everyone to see. But where we are looking right now, we're kind of in the worst place, quote unquote, worst place for BTC that we've kind of ever been. Which is a good thing, right? I mean, if you understand what goes on and if you believe history will kind of repeat, and if you're bullish on cryptocurrency as an industry, then when you see these times, it's pretty good. It's pretty good in my opinion. I mean, my favorite time is the bear market, because if you didn't have enough funds to acquire things, then what good's a bull run for you, right? If you need cheaper prices, then that's good. But I want to show something right here. If we come over here to the weekly, you could see that we are pretty much at the lowest we have ever been on RSI. And I made a post about this recently. And, this is why I try to tell people, simplify it. Just simplify your trading. It doesn't have to be complex at all. You see everyone looks like they're, trying to figure out, who OJ Simpson went after in the 90s, and they got lines all over the place like they're detectives or something, But sometimes it's not that complicated. Imagine if you only took 6 or 7 trades over the last, let's call it, 10 years. Okay. And the only trades that person took is trades, and this is hypothetical, of course. Let's say they only took trades when RSI was at 80 and when RSI was at 30, let's say. Okay, that's what I mean. Sometimes simple can get it done. If somebody had taken a trade down here when RSI was here, and they rode it to the point that it got to 80 right here, that alone's a 2.5x, right? Then if they would have took the time to do a little technical analysis and stuff, and then they wrote it to like the fourth try of trying to get RSI over 80, look what that would have been, you know, 9K%. So it's huge. And then if whenever it did reach this high up there, had they gotten out and waited for RSI to bottom, you could see they would have, you know, been buying at an 85% discount to that. And so sometimes with technical analysis, you can get really off in the weeds. You can confuse yourself. I confuse myself all the dang time. And sometimes it's not good to know too much about something. You know, like my wife used to be in the medical field before she became a stay-at-home mom. And when she was in the medical field, you know, I would tell her like, oh, this hurts. She's like, oh, is it your kidney? Is it this? What's this blood level look like? Blah, 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 blah. And then you get like all worried about stuff, right? Sometimes ignorance is bliss. I don't need to know all that. You know, all I need to know is when RSI is overbought or oversold, you know, and take the rest out of it, you know? And so sometimes I think that that's what's best. And that's what we need to do. Now, if we want to look at what history could potentially do, we need to come back here and take a look at these levels. So if we come right here to the lows we're at now, you can see what we had for BTC right here. And let's correlate that with the price. So at the point where we hit this low of RSI way back here, you can see it was right here. We continued to go down, you know what, about 12%. Okay. But what happened to RSI? You can see RSI went up about, you know, this isn't an accurate measurement, but it went from like 26 to 35. And that's what we call a bullish divergence. You have bearish divergence and bullish divergence. So price is going down, RSI is going up. That is a bullish divergence. However, when you have a price going up like we had right here and you had RSI going down, that's what we call a bearish divergence, my friend. And it took a little while for that to play out, but sure enough, it did. RSI is a key leading factor. Yeah, I agree. And, you know, the thing is, you can't, in my opinion, you know, sure, every time the weekly hits this level and monthly is even better, right? But sometimes, you know, you need to look at lower time frames, or at least I look at lower time frames, but you put all of it together, right? You put all of it together. It's kind of like a recipe, right? You over there cooking granny's favorite recipe, and the main thing in the recipe is eggs. It don't mean you only put eggs, you know. You know, as you start learning technical analysis, as you learn everything, then you can mix other things up in it. If we come over here to the daily on BTC, you can see we hit a level right here on Sunday the 26th that we had only hit, you know, going back 4 years, only hit once, you know. So if that was the only indicator that somebody utilized, well, then they would have done pretty good. And, you know, I said on stream that day when it happened, I said, guys, I've got an order at 58.1 because that was the 200-week simple moving average. And I've talked about the trend line going back to 1600 that I can show you all if you don't not familiar with that, but just let me know. But I had an order and I got front ran. And that's what I get for being greedy. You know, that's what I get for being greedy, is that I was like 58.1. I'm going to set my order right there. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that BTC. I'm going to put it on a ledger and I'm going to put it up for my son. I'm going to forget about it. I don't care. Adios. But, you know, I got front ran, you know, and now would I've kept it up forever? I don't know, because I'll tell you, it wouldn't have been bad if just think if this would have came down to 58.1 and then it would have went up there 13K in like 2 days. That'd be good. That'd be good. You know, maybe I would have took it. You know, I'm learning. But let's see. Bitcoin had a 2008 moment. What do you mean? Let me know. Do you mean that like DATS, all the digital asset treasury companies going under? What are you talking about? We are now ripping through the roof. Let's take a look at some lower time frame stuff. So this is BTC. I mean, it looks good. So let's mark out like our low LTF, like low time frame levels. This is what I don't ever recommend anyone to buy, sell anything. But what I do recommend is for people to mark out key levels. A lot of people aren't very in depth in technical analysis. So let's keep it simple. If we come right here, we could see this point that we're at has been, it was support right there, support right here. I mean, it faked out right here, pretty much support, but then it became resistance right here. And so that's what we're going through resistance wise, so it would be really great to see with volume break through this and then do this, and keep going up. But then we also have, if we look this level right here, this level right here, this level right here. Let's go over to a Coin Glass real quick and take a look at liquidity and see how liquidity is looking. So this basically shows where liquidation levels are expected to be. And so you can see, I mean, we've just taken out a ton of the liquidity down below. You can see right here at 69-ish K, we've got a pocket of liquidity. And then up here, we have a ton of liquidity, but I don't think we're going to make it back to 85 right now. But I could be wrong. But let's take a look at this level right here, the 69K. If we come back over here and look at where that 69K, yeah, it's like right here. I mean, that would be a good trade if it would work out. What would that be? Even from here, 7%. So, put it on a little bit of lev and you never know. It'd be all right, maybe. But yeah, right now I would want to see it. What I am looking for is this right here, what I drew in the blue. I would like to see it, flip the last known resistance support line, flip that into a new support, and then go from there. And then once that happens, it's fairly simple of a trade, right? Like once this happens, then and you get a bounce down to there, what I would do is try to take my trade right here and then just set my stop loss a little bit underneath it. You need to be careful for like liquidity sweeps and stuff like that. I've been stopped out lots of times on very good trades, like potentially cost myself a lot of profit because I had a stop loss set a little too tight. So it's just stuff you live and you learn when you're doing all of this. But I think we need to zoom out a little bit macro wise, because no matter what happens with BTC, no matter what Saylor does, no matter what Trump announces tonight in the State of Union that we're buying a lot of BTC, whatever, the thing I've got my eyes on the most right now has nothing to do with crypto, has nothing to do with Iran either. It really has to do with NVIDIA. And so NVIDIA will have earnings tomorrow night or tomorrow after hours. And if you come over and look at the Qs or the NASDAQ, it kind of looks like we're just trying to hang on, right? It doesn't show absolutely ton of strength. It's just kind of, hanging out there. So if we kind of do this, it's just kind of hanging out, right? And so what I'm really wanting to see is what we're seeing right now is a ton of scared in the market, a ton of hesitancy in the market. Like you see yesterday, Anthropic Claude released something that cobbled that they could basically, do what IBM's number one source of income is, and IBM crashed, and that's why I do want to review this right here. This was by the Kobayashi letter, and then I'll get into, NVIDIA earnings a little bit. But we've seen a lot of this fear talking about, well, is AI going to replace every white collar job? Are we going to not need to save money for retirement? That's like the good thing that if you could ever even envision, out of AI, is this world of abundance that Elon talks about. But I don't know. To me, it just seems like, 1998, we're going to have flying cars in 20 years kind of thing, in terms of not having to worry about finances, not having to worry about any of that. But right now, it's hard to underestimate what artificial intelligence will do. Even with my business, my editing costs used to be like about 4,000 a month, with different editing and stuff like that. And I've been able to lower that cost by about 70% by using AI. Like even my thumbnails, I can create them very easily with prompts. Even a lot of clipping. Like I do have a guy that I absolutely love that like clips the streams and everything. But for some of the videos, like taking a long form video and clipping it, they have tools for that. Now they might not look the absolute best, and my buddy does like a wonderful job with it. But still, I see the efficiency in my own business, right? And these large institutions, they're going to see the very same thing. And so this was a very, very good letter, and I need to subscribe to them. I'll do it on my phone because I pay with it through Apple Pay. But it's like it's too obvious. The masses are never right. That's why I'm probably going to be wrong, and BTC is probably not going to go down to 55K or whatever. But the masses are typically wrong when it comes to things. And right now, everyone seems to be thinking that AI is going to replace all these jobs. That if you have any type of white collar job, you're then going to be out of the work industry in tech, and then you're going to be fighting for jobs with Uber or DoorDash or something like that. And I don't necessarily think that's the case. We used to say the same thing about computers, or I wasn't around for those days, but or at least into finance back then. But the same thing happened with computers. I've seen multiple interviews and things like that when people went to tell businesses, hey, we need to get some computers, get y'all set up to email. And they're like, hey, I've got like 8 clerks over here. I don't need none of that, And so then I'm sure clerks back then were afraid that, or, front desk attendants or things like that were afraid that, oh my gosh, it's computers, the www.com, it's going to replace my job. What am I going to do? But it didn't happen, right? New jobs were formed and things like that. But let's go over this article a little bit. And yeah, like I said, shout out to the Kobayashi letter. They post some wonderful content. It's not AI generated. Maybe they use AI to optimize it, right? That's fine. But just a lot of very intelligent people here that are working on it. And it talks about the stock market just erased 800 billion in market cap because AI taking over the world is becoming the consensus view. But that view is too obvious, and the obvious trade never actually wins. So 2 things about that. One, they're right. Like most of the time, what's obvious is not what wins. And 2, something that I think we need to think about is when they say the stock market erases 800 billion. That doesn't mean that that 800 billion doesn't exist. You know what I mean? It's 800 billion in market cap value, but what, do you think that money is just going to sit in cash forever? Like, what's the rotation? If you look at these companies, the software companies and all that are getting absolutely destroyed right now, if those companies are going down from a trader, from an investor point of view, I'm looking, well, where's that money going to move into? And so the doomsday scenario went viral because it captured something visceral. It framed AI not being a productivity tool, but as a macroeconomic destabilizer. And so Anthropic's been, putting a hammer on some things. They keep releasing new tools, new plugins, and company after company just keeps going down. The last one was IBM, a company that's been around for 100 years? I don't know how long. A very, very long time that they've been around. And so, and one thing I don't like is that they're not even publicly traded. So it's like we can't get any of the upside of what Claude and Anthropic is doing. However, it's, destroying a lot of value. But like I said, it's not like that money's going nowhere. That money is definitely going to go somewhere. But, IBM just posted its worst day since October 2000. And this is what I was talking about after it said it could streamline COBOL code. Okay, Adobe fell 30% year to date. Cybersecurity names collapse on Claude code security. And so, any time in the last 20, 30 years, if IBM would have had a drop like that, looking back, it would have been a perfect buy the dip opportunity. However, is this time different? And that's the question everyone's asking themselves. And that's, what seems is consensus right now. Although, is it consensus? Is everyone, is everyone right? It'd be the first time in history everybody was right. And so I thought this was very interesting of an article. And this is what I hope happens, right? I think for humanity, this is the best thing that we want, And the last thing I want to go over is this: labor markets restructuring, not vanishing. And this is going back to what I said. Whenever we were, in the 2000 era, when computers were first getting adopted and all that stuff, a lot of people thought those jobs were going to vanish. But actually, it created more jobs. Just look at the tech industry. White collar jobs were barely even a thing if you went back 30 or 40 years ago. Yeah, you had Wall Street and certain things like that and sales positions here and there, but you didn't have all these kids going to college, getting in debt 70, 80K to be an entry-level coder. That wasn't a thing. So a key concern is that AI disproportionately affects white-collar employment, which drives discretionary consumption and housing demand. So this is a valid point. AI will go after those white collar jobs more so than if you work with these. That's what I've been saying. If you work with these bad boys, then you're going to be okay for a very long time until Mr. Musk gets robots that are able to do the level of dexterity and what you need to do with these hands. Carpenter, plumber, all of these trades. I was a tradesman. When I was 18, I got married. And I had to make money, right? I had dreams of going to college and all that stuff, but I started working in a pipe shop and I learned how to weld and I learned how to pipe fit. And eventually I went to college and became an engineer and things like that. But that's not how it started off. And those jobs, you can make very, very good livings, very, very good livings. Let's see. History rhymes, .com bubble incoming. Yeah, maybe, but when? That's the question. When? Is it a bubble? I think there's a bubble to a certain extent. Whenever we take a look at all of these companies, you've got companies that have market caps in the billions in the stock market. And they're basically skeleton companies. Like they have no earnings. Like they're not making any money, but they've got either quantum, AI, or something of that nature in their name, in their description, in their category. And because of that, they get these crazy valuations, But so I hope that there's not like mass unemployment and things like that. This is the software, death story kind of thing that, that software companies are done for. Everything's going to be custom built to somebody's liking. But here's the part where crypto comes into it, okay? The bearish narrative argues that agentic commerce, so like artificial, like AI agents, destroys intermediation and eliminates fees. In part, it does. When friction declines, fee extraction becomes harder. Now, this is something that I do think is going to happen. And if we look at what's happening right now with the Clarity Act, the number one argument with the Clarity Act is that there is yield on stablecoins. The reason that's such an argument is not because the banks really care if Coinbase is regulated, if Kraken is regulated, all that. No, they just want to pay you 0.001% interest on your savings account instead of giving you the option to make 3, 4, 5% on that. When, in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, stable coins are better than banks because banks do fractionalized lending and stable coins are backed 1-to-1 per the Genius Act with U.S. Treasuries, short-term U.S. Treasuries. So as shown below, stablecoin transaction volumes are already skyrocketing even before AI became what it is today. It's funny. This is true. And if you come over and look at, I think his name's Stein something. He's the Open Claw guy. Let's look. Open Claw Crypto. But this guy came out and he basically said, hey, we're not going to have absolutely any crypto talk in our Discord. And what I start thinking is, how do you expect your AI to advance and be able to make payments and things like that? Here he is. Okay. Peter Steinberger. But he's basically saying, no crypto. I don't like crypto, which is, it's our fault. Like it's a crypto community's fault, or at least the trench fault, because when this came out, they start making meme coins about it. And they're like, hey man, claim your fees, claim your fees, claim your fees. When, that's not the way we should be approaching people. That's not the way we should be bringing people into cryptocurrency, into blockchain technology, in my opinion. I think we should be showing people how it benefits them. But basically, I commented on something the other day. I was like, how do you expect your AI agents to pay one another? How do you expect any of that to go? Like, are you going to have OpenClaw on a Mac, like walk down to Wells Fargo and try to open a bank account? Like, I don't think so. I don't think that's what's going to happen. And so I think they're going to transact on the blockchain. And whenever they transact on the blockchain, I think it's going to bring a lot of use case to cryptocurrency. Again, it's why one of my favorite, companies out right now. And what I think is, I don't know if it's I think it might be. I think I would say that this is my favorite bet, like my favorite investment in the stock market right now in terms of cryptocurrency is Circle, because Circle is the #1 US regulated company behind stablecoins, and shout out to Blofin, guys. I asked them if they could get Circle on there. They got Circle on there. So if you're just now joining, Blofin is our stream sponsor. Without them, it'd be hard to do a lot of this stuff, guys. So if you would like to join, there will be a QR code in the top right that you could join Blofin. But like I said, Circle is something that IPO'd at $31. Okay. And they instantly went up to over $300. Or I say instantly, within a little bit of time. If we come over here and look at Circle, I've got it all mapped out. So basically, this was the IPO price. Came up, tagged $300, and then it came down here. And I know this is a little hard to see. Let me clean this up a little bit. But you can see it tagged the 786 fib level perfectly right here at about $50. And now it's coming up and it got rejected at this, this trend line right here. So yeah, this is one that I did, never financial advice, but I purchased it myself around $60. Was a purchase that I made. And, they have earnings coming out tomorrow as well, which is something that we could look into right here. So you can see their market cap's about 15 bill. But this is the #1 stablecoin company in the world, or not in the world, publicly traded company in the world. Tether is still larger if we come take a look, but they don't have the regulation that Circle has right now. So if we look right here, Circle is at a market cap. This is the stable coin Circle, not the company. So the company Circle is at 15 billion market cap, whereas Circle, the actual USDC, is about 6 times that, 5 or 6 times that. So it's about 75 bill right there. Where Tether is a little over double that. Tether has a very big presence overseas. Tether has a large presence on Tron chain, things like that. But USDC is pretty massive, right? And as we start seeing more and more stable coins come out, what I think we're going to see is a lot of white labeled stable coins come out. Meaning, if we take a look at this real quick, I think Wendy posted something earlier. Let me come over to X about Meta. Okay. Meta, which is the company behind Facebook and everything, they are wanting to have stable coins. Okay. She said Meta is a stable coin, planning stable coin comeback. They have a massive ecosystem. that this will transition to and help with crypto adoption long term. As a creator, I would love to get my monetization in stables. And so I don't think Meta is going to go out and try to make their own chain. They've tried to do that before. They were not successful at that before. But what I could see these JP Morgans and all of these companies, Meta, X, I don't know. Elon likes to make his own stuff. Like, he's even making his own chips right now. So I don't know what they're going to do. But in terms of, most of these companies, if I had to guess, what they're going to do is work with Circle, the company, to make and distribute their stable coins. And a lot of that's going to be done on the Ethereum chain. Ethereum's about 60% of all of DeFi. And so there's a lot of very good reasons to be bullish on cryptocurrency, although we've got about 95% of these that need to go to zero, and they should go to zero, in my opinion. And when they go to zero, it's going to let the ones that have really been building, really been working, come up. But we know there's a lot of grifters out there. And so this is something really big coming out in 2 days. Zach XBT, if you don't know who he is, he's a large blockchain investigator. He works with certain chains to help, people that got scammed get their funds back. He's done investigations that have led to arrests. He's done a lot of good things for the crypto industry, in my personal opinion. But he released a major investigation drop in February 26th on one of crypto's most profitable businesses, where multiple employees abused internal data to insider trade over a prolonged period of time. And if you take a look, there's been people right here opening up trades that they believe it is Meteora, which is one of the largest liquidity providers on Solana. And I don't know if y'all remember this, but back during the days of the Trump coin coming out, Melania coin, the one that president, Melania or whatever his name was, when we seen that come out, there was a lot of talk about Meteora and employees, insider trading off of that. Like, they knew the liquidity pools were coming. They knew they were going to be, traded on. And so this is something I'll keep y'all updated with. Which crypto company will Zach XBT expose for insider trading? So if we look, Meteora is sitting at the top with about 30% chance of that being it. Then you have Mexi. Mexi doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, are they profitable? I'm sure. Do they have a great reputation? Not really. So like, it's plausible that they could get caught up in that. However, I don't necessarily think that, that's going to be it. Axiom, I mean, how would they really be able to do that? Pump Fund? Okay, I could see that. Like, I've heard rumors of all these companies, not Pump Fund, but these other launch pads that basically, before the dev gets the contract address or anything, that they've already sniped 1 or 2 or 3% of the supply, right? And then they blame it on snipers, but in all actuality, it's allegedly these other platforms, right? And I'm not going to name any of them, but Pump Fund's not one that I'm talking about. Wintermute, Wintermute's very well known. I don't think that's going to be who it is. A lot of people obviously are thinking Binance, but I don't think it's going to be Binance for a couple reasons. Like, he started working with BNB chain, and not that means he wouldn't go, if he's seen something exposed, that he wouldn't go after him. I just believe that he's done his due diligence to think that, even though there's a lot of, rumors around Binance and stuff, that they're not actually one of them, that's doing it. So yeah, it's interesting to see. But this is a pretty crazy thing when we think about that. A guy that is well known in the crypto industry, but it's not like he's, Leonardo DiCaprio or something like that. But that, someone that's known in the industry can then have a poly market made about him. that has over 7 million in volume on it based off what article he's going to put out in a day. It seems pretty crazy. I think he's everything I hear, he's like a great guy, super high integrity. And so I don't think he would insider trade on it. But, there's lots of people that if they made something about him, they would definitely do it. Not him, but other people would. So it's just interesting to see. Let's see. Yeah, much love to you as well. Much love to you as well. Let's so we've got Nvidia earnings coming up tomorrow, and we're gonna get to Max over with Alpha Arcade here in a little bit. What I kind of want to go through this with y'all. So this is a prediction market, and it's the third largest prediction market currently, which is a pretty big deal when you think about it. The names that they're behind currently are Kalshi, okay, which is not crypto native, and then Polymarket, which is crypto native, right? Both of those are, I believe, already registered in the United States. If not, they're about to be very large names, right? And so Alpha Arcade, something that I personally have used it, and it was very good. And they have a lot of options, a lot of things like that. And so I'll go through and show you a little bit. It looks very similar to Polymarket, any of that, but the currency that I utilized was USDC on Algo. And so it's just interesting. A lot of people see Algorand and think that, it's been around forever. It's like a polka dot or something like that, but it couldn't be further from the truth, in my opinion. Quantum resistance, you can see they're very, very proud of that when we look at this right here. So I went to ETH Denver, and I was pleasantly surprised to see them there. Because, obviously they're not built on Ethereum, but they were there. And they had, I would say, 3 or 4 people from their team there. And I introduced my friend Crypto Empress to them and just talked about everything that they're working on. And one thing interesting about it is that they're making a lot of moves right now behind the scenes that make me think that they're wanting to make a big push. So one, if you look at their stable coin, it's USDC. Okay, it's not USDT anymore. So they have USDC. Okay, if you look at USDC, as we already talked about a second ago, it's backed by Circle, which Circle is, a large company in the United States that is regulated in the United States. It's also heavily backed by Coinbase, the largest exchange in the United States. And Algorand just officially moved back to the United States. So Algorand is a partner of the channel. This is not a sponsored stream or segment or anything like that, but they are a partner of the channel. But I would never talk about anything that I don't absolutely 100% believe in, guys. So let's try to click over. Let me see if I can bring Max up here. Let's see. Does that work? Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Let's see. Hopefully you don't have background noise. You should be good, though. How are you doing, Max? Thank you for joining us.
Good. Yeah, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I wish you could have made it to Ethereum Denver.
No, me too. It's been a minute since I've been to a crypto conference, so trying to get to the next big one for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking at either Consensus, I think it's in Florida, Miami, or Tampa, one of those. And then the other option would be going to Bitcoin conference. I'm just trying to, they're like a week apart, and I got little kids at the house. My wife will kill me if I'm gone for like 2 weeks at a time. So yeah, I got to pick just one.
I'm with you.
But yeah, man, thank you very much for joining us. So can you let us know a little bit about Max? Not so much about necessarily Alpha Arcade or anything like that, but who are you and why did you choose to build on Algorand versus any other chain that you could have built on?
Right. Well, I mean, I guess just kind of my background in tech and startups. I'm also the founder of a company called Lofty, which is the world's largest tokenized real estate marketplace. We started Lofty in 2018 with a completely different business model. Back then, we were using AI and social media to basically track hipsters and find up-and-coming neighborhoods to then buy properties in those neighborhoods because they were expected to go up in value. We got into Y Combinator in 2019, quickly pivoted to another business model during YC. We got out of YC. That other model wasn't working. And this was the time that NFTs were exploding. We kind of knew the guys over at OpenSea, and we thought, NFTs are very unique, but they're pretty gimmicky at this point. Like, people are spending millions of dollars on, pictures of apes, which, to each their own. But we thought, what if we take this tokenization technology and apply it to an asset class where it really makes sense, like real estate? The accounting is pretty backwards. Tracking ownership is tough. Transactions are slow. And so we launched our first property in, I believe, 2019. And to this point, we've launched about 150, done about 100 million in TVL. And it's been an exciting journey. And this space is completely nuts. The ups and the downs are, the lowest lows to the highest highs. I think I'm preaching to the choir, obviously. But it's been great. And then last year, during the election, when Polymarket was blowing up, I guess November 2024, actually, we kind of had the idea to create our own prediction market on Algorand, just really because we thought the idea was interesting and we were really into prediction markets at this time, just kind of as a side project. It was just something fun to do. And, fast forward to now, I think we've done about 25 million in volume on Alpha Arcade. And so now, we have these two companies kind of side by side, and it's been a blast. It's been really interesting kind of starting a new company and being able to build it from scratch after working on Lofty so consistently for so long. So it's been, I guess you could say, a breath of fresh air working on Alpha Arcade. And again, it's building on Algorand was an easy decision. The transaction speed is just so fast. The fees are so low. Obviously, the audience isn't as large as some of these other chains like Solana and ETH. We feel it's just a matter of time because usually the technology wins. And with Algorand, we've had Lofty up for 5 years and there's been zero downtime ever, not once. So it's not even something we have to think about, whereas a lot of these other projects kind of have to factor that in to their planning, whereas we've never had to.
Yeah, a lot of people, like I said earlier, Algorand kind of gets grouped into like this dino chain. And, I mean, been around forever, right? But when you look at it like quantum resistant, right? When you look at, everyone's now with privacy hearing about ZK proofs, but the founder of Algorand is actually, who helped create ZK proofs that everyone talks about today. And so there's just so much that is in the history of crypto, of Algorand, that people don't really know about. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And like you said, tech normally wins in the end. I've been someone that said, like, I think 95% of crypto is vaporware, and once we get rid of that, then we can have liquidity concentrate into the really good assets and everything like that. And so whenever you're looking at, you built Lofty, and I want to get into that in a little bit because I'm very bullish on real world assets in general, but real estate, it just makes sense to tokenize real estate from a multiple of fronts. But when it comes to building a new prediction market, what were some of the biggest challenges that you found with that, building a new company from scratch and being able to build it, to actually be useful? Because I used it myself and it was extremely smooth. The only part that didn't work on it was that I didn't win. That was the only thing. I tried to do like a parlay during the Super Bowl. And so that was the only thing. I didn't win, but I can't blame that on you.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the challenges were very limited. Like, for us building Lofty, we were, at least to my knowledge, the first company building a tokenized real estate marketplace with like decentralized governance and voting. And so there was no blueprint whatsoever. We had to come up with everything from scratch, not knowing if it would work or not, and then just iterate as we went, which is extremely difficult. With Alpha Arcade, we were able to kind of go off of these other companies that had already established themselves and say, all right, if Polymarket built this feature, their team of 100 probably A/B tested this feature for a couple months before launching it. We could be pretty confident that if we launch this too, it's going to make sense and it's going to work for the users. This was also the time that AI was really taking off. And so you could start using these agents to build the product a lot faster. These two components were really the only reasons we were able to build Alpha Arcade while we were still working on Lofty, because we had something to go off of. And it's kind of like I mentioned, been a completely different experience. But naturally, like building a company and a startup is always difficult regardless. With Alpha Arcade, we launched a token right when we launched the product. And like with Lofty, we still haven't launched a token. And we wanted to do this. We wanted to launch a token that actually made sense and had utility, like not launching a token just to launch a token, which I think, 99% of projects in crypto do. And so that was probably the hardest part, was coming up with tokenomics that actually made sense. And so we set it up to where there are trading fees on Alpha Arcade, but we don't actually make any money. So half of the trading fees are airdropped to Alpha token holders as USDC. So you're essentially getting dividends. And then the other half of trading fees are used to buy more Alpha, which is then burned to reduce supply. And so it has this burn mechanism built in. And to us, this was just a really great way to kind of create this flywheel where, like, if you're using the Alpha Arcade product, you also want to own Alpha token because you're essentially getting a rebate on those trading fees that you're paying, right? And to date, we haven't sold any tokens as a company. We think it's going to be a really great way to get more users on our platform. If they hold Alpha, they're going to want to use the product, and vice versa. Product users will also want to hold the token. So I would say that was the most challenging part, was actually coming up with these tokenomics. And then funny enough, since that, I've seen a ton of other tokens launch with these kind of revenue sharing burn mechanisms. I don't want to say we were the first, but we hadn't heard of other companies doing this before we launched Alpha token.
I like it, because I think we both agree a lot of tokens aren't needed. You know what I mean? You see, but in the cases where there are a lot of tokens, I question, well, what's the token do? That's just this huge thing we have in crypto right now, where you have like a company behind the scenes of something, and then there's a token, but there's really no correlation behind governance. And to the average person, what the hell's governance, and why do I care what governance is? Like, what does it do to me? I see a lot of it. The company is doing, XYZ, all of these statistics, and I look at the coin and I'm like, hey, are you awake over there? What's going on? And so it sounds like y'all have been able to build an actual utility for this. And I think it sets it apart from any other project, because if we look at Polymarket, they don't have a token, do they? Right?
Not that I know of. No, I don't.
Couch is not crypto related, right? So that's one thing that sets Alpha Arcade apart. But from a user perspective, from somebody that's just wanting to trade on a prediction market, what has been some things that y'all built in that you could say set y'all apart from a Cowshy or a Polymarket from a user feature standpoint?
Sure. I think there's a few things. One of them I would say is our parlay feature. So to my knowledge, we're the only platform that allows you to parlay any types of events together. So for example, you could parlay like a Russia-Ukraine ceasefire with the US discovering aliens this year, with the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl and the Lakers scoring over 100 points tomorrow. So you can combine all of those together into a single parlay, which again is super interesting and a little weird, but people are interested in tons of different things. Someone might be really interested in the Grammys and also interested in Grand Theft Auto releasing this year, right? They should be able to put their money where their mouth is and combine those predictions into one. So that's something that definitely sets us apart. I would say we launched the ability for anyone to create their own market, which is instantly approved. So you can go on Alpha Arcade, you can create your own market, it goes live. And at that point, anyone could come in and they can make predictions on your market. And so, for example, if you're with like a group of friends and you guys are playing a video game, like you're playing 2K, and you want to essentially bet or make a prediction on who's going to win, you could spin up a market quickly. People could put in funds. You don't have to argue about like, did we shake on this? Like, how much are we predicting for? You could just spin up a market quickly on Alpha Arcade. So that's another cool thing we do differently. And then one thing we're really leaning into soon is kind of these like live stream prediction markets. So being able to watch like any live stream of anyone and being able to make a prediction during that live stream. So you can imagine like when IShowSpeed raced Ashton Hall, how hyped that was at the time. Imagine being able to make a prediction on who might win that race in real time with the odds updating in real time as well. I would say the last thing is kind of how we focus around like LP rewards, like liquidity rewards. So right now, like we essentially liquidity is provided in the marketplace by people. People place liquidity near the midpoint and they essentially earn USDC by providing that liquidity. So we just committed to paying out $100,000 over the next year to these liquidity providers. And we made it super simple for people to create their own bots. They can trade, they can ARB. And this is something that, Polymarket and Kalshi run on. But at this point, there's so much competition with those apps. And because we just launched this product, there's really not that many bots going. And so this is something we're seeing people being the most excited about because we pay USDC rewards every hour. So you can literally spin up a trading bot in 20 minutes, start placing liquidity, and you're just going to get USDC airdrop directly to your wallet. And, you can make a ton of money off of this without even essentially predicting, right? You're just providing liquidity. You're not gambling or anything like that. So yeah, I would say those are the biggest things that set us apart right now.
That's awesome. And guys, I see some questions coming. We'll get to them at the end for Max. If anyone has any questions about Alpha Arcade or what we're going to talk to, we're giving them an opportunity to answer some of those at the end. But I want to pivot a little bit and talk about Lofty a little bit because I'm very bullish on tokenization of real world assets for a lot of reasons. Like, not only does it make sense for the entire world to move on chain, I'm somebody that thinks my great grandchildren will have their birth certificate on chain, right? Like, yeah. I'm that far into this belief. But another thing is there's like, I went to a while back before I started making content, I went to try to get, a $10,000 HELOC to put floors in for my wife or whatever. Right. And it's just like this long process. Why can't I just, sell a fractionalized NFT or something like that for 1% of my home or 2% of my home? Why does it have to go through all these middlemen? Why? I think, we can streamline all of that, but prediction markets, you had with Alpha Arcade, you had something to go off of. You had a blueprint. With Lofty, like you said, y'all didn't have that to go off of. So what was it that inspired Lofty, and what exactly is it as a tokenization real estate platform?
Right. I would say the inspiration at the time, we were just trying to figure out what to do. We tried multiple pivots in the real estate tech space and nothing was working as well as we wanted it to. And, NFTs were kind of hot. And so we just said, like, this is interesting. Let's try it. And I think at the time we were very naive. We didn't think about what it takes to start a platform like this, not just like from the tech perspective, but like from the regulatory compliance, like money transfer laws, operations. We just kind of pressed go and just went. And I think it actually benefited us because a lot of companies, a lot of people will really look into all these intricacies and nuances with tokenization, and they'll just kind of freak themselves out and never get started. Whereas for us, we just thought it would be easy when in reality, it's been the most difficult thing that we could have ever imagined. So we got lucky in that sense. But we've set this up in a pretty interesting way. So every property on the marketplace is owned by an individual Wyoming DAO LLC. And so when you purchase a token of a property, you're purchasing ownership in the DAO that owns the property. And in the DAO operating agreement, it states that the wallet address that holds the token is the legal owner of the property, right? So if you buy a token in a property, you're the owner because it's in your wallet. But if you then sell that token to someone else, you automatically are not the owner and they become the new owner because they now hold that token in their wallet. And so the ownership is fully represented on chain. And just to kind of go back to your HELOC example, that's essentially what we do. You might own your primary residence and you want to pull out 10% of your equity, but you don't want to deal with banks and you don't want to refi. We basically move your deed into a new DAO LLC that we've already formed, at which point you own 100% of the DAO. You create your Lofty account. We send you all the tokens. You still own 100%. But at this point, you can now click the sell button and sell tokens of your property to investors on our marketplace. And when you do that, you receive USDC to your account. You sell 10% of your tokens. You now get 90% of the rent. You own 90% of the property. And so we've done this for, close to like 150 properties at this point, rentals, primary residences, Airbnbs, land, commercial properties, all over the place. Like tokenizing a house compared to a car or a boat, it's all the same thing. You just put it into this specific entity, and the operating agreement that we've worked on alongside the governance program really kind of runs the show.
Yeah, I could only imagine how complex it is, and it's probably good you hit the ground running, because if you would have thought about it, maybe you wouldn't have done it, because there's just so much that goes into it, But what has some of the regulatory hurdles been? I could just imagine so much. Like you have a tokenized asset, then it sells in real life. How does that transfer over? Like I could just imagine a whole bunch of regulatory, hurdles that you have to go through. So what has been some of the regulatory things that y'all have done? I know you say registered in Wyoming. And where do you see us going in, let's say, the next 3 to 5 years with this huge tokenization push that we've seen? Right now we're heavily into stocks being tokenized, right? But we've heard the likes of Larry Fink from BlackRock say, everything's going to be tokenized, right? So where do you see that going over the next few years as well?
On the regulatory front, we probably spent 30% of all of our time on regulatory stuff. We kind of had a different thesis about Lofty very, very early on, which is why it's turned into a product that's completely different than anything else you see out there. Just to kind of give an example, like looking at any other like fractional real estate platforms, those are all essentially funds. They're buying properties themselves, then they're flipping them to investors, and they're managing the properties, right? So they might buy a property for $400,000, put some work into it, sell it to investors for $500,000. You could still buy a share at $50, but you're not essentially like owning property or you are owning it alongside them, but they're essentially like funds or REITs, right? We're a lot different. We don't own any tokens or properties on our platform. We are a pure marketplace. And so because of that, it kind of sets up the regulatory environment a lot differently. We don't own anything. We don't make any decisions. Because of this qualifies all of the investors in the properties as being active, because they're actually voting on every decision that comes with the property, right? This essentially denotes that these tokens are not securities because the investors are the ones making the decisions. So even if the person that lists their property on our marketplace wants to sell it a year later, they need to get a portion of the investors to vote alongside them in order for that property to sell. And again, we have nothing to do with this. We're just the ones sending out the votes. So this has really been the difference between us and anyone else, the fact that we are this pure marketplace. We've taken kind of the Airbnb, Uber model where like we don't own anything, right? We just make our money when tokens are traded, right? We're getting a few percentage points from the buy and the sell side. And so interestingly enough, because there's no lockup period, meaning you could buy a token and sell it immediately after, this opens up for a lot of like day trading opportunities. For example, a tenant might be late on their rent. So someone panic sells their $50 token for $45. You pick it up at 45, wait for the tenant to pay off their balance, and then flip it at 50. Or maybe an Airbnb is in the off season, right? It peaks during the summer, but it's winter, so the yield is lower. People are kind of selling their tokens at a lower price. You pick them up with the idea of kind of arbitraging, waiting for the summer, and then selling those tokens at a higher price. And so it truly acts like an exchange. That's been the entire thesis, to really make like the NASDAQ for real estate. And that's something we've been able to do. And just to kind of go back to the voting part, because I think this is one of the more unique aspects of the product. Investors can literally vote on anything. So for example, there was a property in Cleveland where the actual tenant of the property owned tokens, right? Which is another cool aspect. Like these tenants and properties can just go to our website, click a button, and become a part owner, right? Which is really cool. They feel a sense of ownership. They're more likely to take better care of the property. So there was one vote where a tenant sent an update to the investors. They said, hey guys, I actually live in this property. It's really hot in the summer. Could we use $200 from the maintenance reserve to put a ceiling fan in my bedroom? And this obviously passed with the supermajority. Owners bought the fan, the property manager did, installed it, and the tenant/owner was happy. So this is fully decentralized. We don't make the decisions. And again, this is just something that, you know, we do that is completely different than all these other companies. And we feel this is the way to truly scale a platform like this to a $100 billion company. Because if you're constantly buying and flipping properties, you just need so much capital and debt, whereas we don't need any, right? People just come to our platform, we tokenize it, they list them, people trade, and we just sit back and continue to really improve the product, right? And so it's been hard to build it to this point, but now that we have, it's exciting to be able to really scale it.
Yeah, I think what would be really cool, and I'm curious if y'all have seen any of this, is, you know, like a private credit deal. Like, let's say, Max, you're selling a home to me, like a rent to own type of thing. It'd be really cool if we agreed that, hey, over, I don't know, you know, 150 payments, right? 150 months, we're going to do this deal, this amount of interest. We bake it all out. We know what the payment is. Every month I pay you, and, you know, through that, then I get 1 out of 300 fractionalized shares or whatever it is. If it's 150 payments, 300 payments, one of those, and it comes over and it's able to be tracked like that. Have you seen anyone utilizing the platform for that kind of ordeal? And if not, is that something you think has potential as this industry continues to grow?
Totally. Yeah, we can do that now. We see the credit side as potentially being larger than the equity side of this, kind of like tokenized mortgages. We currently have like multiple lending DAOs on the platform that will essentially like loan funds to properties that need money for repairs, and they can choose their own interest rate. Of course, this gets voted on. So this is already in action. We've been doing these for a bit, and then we're actually launching our own lending protocol where users will be able to essentially get loans on their token purchases. And so you can purchase, say, 5 tokens for the price of 1, get 80% LTV. The interest payments come directly out of the rent you receive, which actually comes in daily. And if you were to default, your tokens would automatically be liquidated on the marketplace. And we're able to do that because we have our own automated market maker that we built that allows people to buy and sell tokens instantly without actually having to match with a counterparty. And this is done through, people coming in, staking USDC against the properties. You could stake your own property tokens. So you might buy a property token that's giving you like a 5% rental yield, but you're staking it or lending it out, and you could be getting another 5% yield on top of that. So this allows people to kind of compound those returns. Obviously, there's more risk, but again, this is something that no one else is doing.
Wow. Yeah, it's really interesting concept. And so getting back to the second part of that question, like where do you see us going in the next 3 to 5 years or even 10 years? Just where do you see us going in order to get to where this is a fully adopted thing, like real estate tokenization? Because I can think of a couple scenarios in my head that could cause like a headache. For instance, if I agreed to have a tokenized property, but then I went and I sold the property on my own, right? Like, is there any of that correlation yet? Or, that would stop that sale from going on in the real world? And if not, where do you think we're going to be able to achieve that or get to that in the next few number of years?
Right. So you would not be able to do that on our platform. If you tried to close with the title company, they wouldn't approve the operating agreement for the DAO entity because you are just a single person that's not even named in the operating agreement. And so that just wouldn't go through. Our belief has been that probably in the next 7 to 10 years, over half of real estate transactions will take place on the blockchain. We essentially want to be the largest exchange with the most liquidity, where we're kind of getting a piece of every transaction. Realistically, and it's not just tokenization, it's kind of Web3 in general. It's all going to depend on, in my opinion, like the user interface and the user experience. That's been the biggest thing preventing 90-something% of these products from going mainstream is, some, I don't know, normie comes on, they want to use this product, but then they have to create this wallet and they get 24 pass phrases, random words, and a warning that if they forget them, they lose all their money. And they're like, all right, you know what? I'm over this.
Yeah.
And so with Lofty, like we used to force people to create their own wallet during the onboarding process. And the drop-off rate at that point specifically was like 65%. We then decided we're going to create this Lofty wallet that's embedded into your account. So you don't need to create your own wallet. It kind of just acts as like a Fidelity or an E-Trade account. And after that, our conversion rates just went through the roof. And so I think this is the biggest thing. On Lofty, we don't even want people to realize that they're buying a token or that it's even on the blockchain. We just want them to think, wow, that was a great user experience, not knowing it's a result of us being built on the blockchain. And so I think that's the thing. It has to be in the background. People are already paranoid enough by crypto and blockchain. Everyone at this point has been or knows someone that's been screwed, right? Whether they invested on something on Pump Fund or they bought like Trump coin and now they're down 80%. At this point, you just kind of need to remove the tokenization part from the equation. And that, in my opinion, is the only way at this time, while we're still kind of in this, there's still this stigma about it. This is the way to bring mainstream into like Web3.
100%. It has to be seamless. There has to be zero learning to do with it. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to onboard people into crypto, you know, and it's one of the things that frustrates me now in hindsight about like the Trump coin, right? Mm-hmm. Because how many people seen a tweet from a president and they went on where they could buy it with Stripe or, there was all these ways. You didn't have to go swap on a wallet, right? They had like ways you could just buy it, and how many of that like just made a horrible first impression for people,
Exactly.
Or I see people all the time that are working in like the AI community, and you're going to have blockchain to do microtransactions between AI agents, for instance. But they're so like got this stigma around crypto because they've got all these trench guys, typing at them, hey, collect your fees, right. That they just write off crypto in general. So we've got this problem with crypto right now that a small portion of it, but a loud portion of it has kind of given us this, macro wise, this bad impression on non-crypto native people. And it stops them from coming on and experiencing what the blockchain is or how the blockchain can save them money, by eliminating title companies or eliminating, all these intermediaries, an agent, this or that, and so to be able to just take the crypto out of it and just be able to have it just a platform that's just better than anything else you've ever used. I think that's really the key for us to get mainstream adoption for some of these assets. And so I want to ask you before we get into some questions, is there anything else about Lofty that y'all are going to be changing, any upgrades or features that y'all are going to be bringing in the next, say, 12, 24 months that currently aren't on the platform?
I'd say the biggest thing is the lending protocol, essentially peer-to-peer lending, being able to lend another Lofty user and their tokens are essentially collateralized for that loan. Like I said, we see credit as potentially being like a larger piece than the equity side, like with the properties. That was kind of just the jumping off point. So in the future, we see people, being able to get a mortgage through Lofty. Right? You don't have to go through these traditional banks, spend 2 months and to just not get the best interest rate or potentially not even get approved. So I would say lending is a huge piece. And then really just scaling up the types of properties. It's just a really cool experience to be able to bring your property on chain and tell your friends like, hey guys, you're at my house last weekend. You can now buy a piece of it for $50. And if you need to sell it, you just click this button and it sells instantly. Again, we have different types of properties, but we love to launch unique types of assets. Like we've had people want to launch essentially like a yacht that pays rental income based on like renting it to different parties, paying income that way, like a self-driving vehicle that like a Waymo that picks up passengers and income is paid through that. So we see I wouldn't say we're a real estate tokenization platform. Again, that was just the initial premise. We could tokenize any types of assets, whether it's card collections, gold, oil rigs. And so this is something we want to explore because for all we know, real estate might not even be the best asset to tokenize. It could be, again, like oil or rare minerals. This could be the thing that people are the most interested in. Obviously, they're different audiences, but these are things that we also want to explore as well.
Yeah, collectibles. You see that one Pokemon card go for like 16 million or something like that. And there's a lot of opportunity in that conversation about that collectible card that Logan Paul had, because when you look at it, they allegedly it was tried to be tokenized. 49% of it was tried to be tokenized, and a lot of stuff went south with that, right? And that obviously puts a bad name on tokenization or anything, when really I think you've got grifters in this space that come here just as opportunists, trying to do things like that, tokenize things, versus if people like yourself that actually know what they're doing was to tokenize any type of these assets. You can really have a real deal feel on what the value of it is, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I wish they came to us. We could have tokenized that card and launched it like 2 days later, and we could have went on. Anyone could have came on, bought a piece of it. So yeah,
and you get
there are a lot of
feel of it. You know what I mean? Because a one of one kind of thing, you can guess what it's going to go for, but I mean, it was bought 1 year, and then years later, it's going to be auctioned off, right? So nobody knew, is it going to go for this or that, and so this might hurt you on Alpha Arcade because you wouldn't be able to predict on the market cap of it when it would sell, but you would have a real live value or perceived value, tokenized value of what that is worth. And so I'd like to jump over, and we got a couple questions here. Won't be able to go through all of them, but we've got a question here on how long has Alpha Arcade been building? So this is the prediction market we talked about earlier. And do I have to have KYC to trade?
We launched last Super Bowl 2025. So we've been around for a little over a year at this point. You do not need to KYC. You can come on, you can connect your wallet. If you want to go through Coinbase or use a card or like Apple Pay, then you do need to KYC.
Yeah, whenever I used
Polymarket in that sense.
Yeah, whenever I used it, it connected, wanted to connect me to Coinbase and everything, but then I connected my ALGO wallet to it and everything like that. Let's see, what's this? You the man, dude. Hope your throat is healed. Yeah, I'm over the strep throat, man.
Do you just have strep? I'm coming off food poisoning 3 days.
Man, with kids, you always have something. And then I thought I had it last night when I got home from ETH Denver. I was like, golly, because I didn't take the last 3 antibiotics that I had or something. Yeah. I was like, man, is it coming back? But I think it's just from being in Denver for a few days.
I'm with you.
What's their expected market cap by 2030?
For Alpha? That's tough. Yeah,
that's the only thing. It's more of like a utility coin, right? It's not something that's trying to go up a ton from what I'm guessing. But maybe we could pivot it a little bit to this, because you said that you didn't want to launch a token just for the sake of launching a token, and y'all found a use case for an alpha token, right? Half of the fees go into burning, so essentially making it deflationary, the token, and the other half goes to distributing rewards for current alpha holders, right? But hypothetically, if Lofty was going to launch a token, or any tokenization platform was going to launch a token, what are some use cases that you could see that token being used for versus just being vaporware?
Right. For Lofty specifically, we could do something similar where there are trading fees on Lofty that we just make as a company. And maybe if you own Lofty, Lofty token, which again doesn't exist, you could maybe get like 20% of those trading fees, and maybe a portion goes to the buy and burn mechanism as well. Holding a certain number of Lofty tokens allows you to, I don't know, propose governance votes, or, when new properties are launched on Lofty, they're reviewed by a user on Lofty, and they receive tokens in the launch as compensation. So potentially they receive like tokens in the property as compensation. So potentially that can be flipped to where, like, if a user reviews the inspection report for a new property launch, they can earn Lofty tokens for doing that. So some kind of rewards system could make sense. But we could do a very similar, have very similar tokenomics on Lofty as we do on Alpha Arcade. It didn't make as much sense. And now at this point, like we're so far into Lofty, launching a token feels a little more gimmicky, although it's something we still may do in the future.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got a lot of respect for y'all because you didn't launch it. A lot of people, it's like a quick money grab that you could try to get and, help for funding of a project and things like that. And, just going through the list, like I talk about it every day on stream or in my videos, that, a lot of things do not need tokens,
right.
and it's just the simple truth in it. So, well, Max, thank you for coming on. Is there any last things you would like to talk about with Alpha Arcade or with Lofty or Algorand in general?
No, I mean, I really appreciate you having me on. I think the market's in a pretty interesting spot right now. I think, a lot of people told their uncles and hairdressers to buy Bitcoin at 125K and they're not too happy. And altcoins are kind of not in the best spot as well. In my opinion, it's the same thing that happens every couple of years. There's always people freaking out on Twitter saying that it's dead, and crazy theories like Epstein invented Bitcoin, and it's nonsense to me. Like, this is just the same thing that happens every couple of years, and you don't lose until you sell. So
that's man. I think it's I think it's weird when you look at a lot of altcoins right now, and I didn't know how deep you wanted to sit with Algorand or working on Algorand and stuff. But, when you look at a lot of altcoins, they look at their like do or die levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I do think, like I've said, plenty of times, that a lot of them, I do think, will go to zero or maybe already going to zero. I think 10/10, October 10th did a lot of damage to the industry that we probably don't know about it yet. I think we'll eventually hear about it, whether it's market makers, whether it's projects, but the ones that do make it out of this, I'm very excited about them. We just have so much vaporware spread out throughout everything. So let me ask you one last question before we break about macro crypto a little bit. If you had to name 3 narratives that aren't just metas per se, okay, that are actual use case narratives that actually have, will make your life better, will make my life better, will make the world better. What would you say the 2 or 3 narratives you, Max, as an investor, not a developer, are looking at, going forward into next cycle?
Right. I'm obviously biased. I have to say tokenization, and not just of real estate, but really just moving everything on chain. Like you mentioned, moving title on chain. We work with title companies constantly, and I had to convince one of them to stop using a fax machine and to take checks. Like, that was something I had to convince them of. Having your identity on chain. Like, these are things that will be the norm in probably 5 to 10 years, and people will look back and say, how did we ever do it the other way? It's just, again, these industries are just so stuck in their ways and backwards that it's not something that can happen overnight. And I think a lot of companies that tried to disrupt these very old-fashioned industries, they were just too early. And I think we were too early with Lofty. We probably should have. We started it in 2019. No one cared about tokenization until like, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And so timing is a big piece of it. And then again, like I would say different markets, whether it's perps or prediction markets as well, being on chain, just like the transparency, the fact that it's immutable, oracles, although obviously there can be issues with those. I think it's a really great use case of crypto and really the blockchain. And I do think prediction markets are a force for good as well. They allow people to hedge. They give you insight onto certain events that, beforehand you would just have to go on your Twitter timeline and suss out, like, are there more opinions for people wanting to do this or this? And most of them are bots, right? But on prediction markets, if someone has to put their money where their mouth is, right, they're probably going to spend a lot more time researching that subject. So just as an example, like if you're living in Tampa, Florida, and you don't have insurance for your home, and you see that there's a 75% chance there's going to be a hurricane in Tampa, you can hedge by essentially buying yes. And if that hurricane ends up happening, you get paid out. Right. And so I think these kind of like insurance-esque products for prediction markets will be very interesting. But yeah, I'm obviously going to be biased and say tokenization and prediction markets. I wouldn't be working on those two companies if I didn't think those were two of the most kind of unique use cases of blockchain, I would say.
What do you think about this new, it kind of everything came out at once, right? Like Zcash got resurrected, and then you had, then Midnight came out, which is a Cardano thing. And so this privacy narrative, came out, which it is true. The blockchains, I always say completely anonymous if you don't dox yourself, but completely transparent, right? But do you see any need for privacy in any of the businesses that you're running, the real estate or the tokenization marketplace or the prediction market? Do you think there's any need for that?
I think people more for like a peace of mind. It is very private in the sense that like the operating agreement doesn't even say anyone's names for the DAO. It just, says that the wallet address that holds the tokens is the owner, and then all the wallet addresses and the transactions are on chain. And so I think kind of the ethos of crypto is privacy. I mean, a lot of people in crypto, these are the people that are kind of running VPNs, right? They're anti-establishment. They don't want the government to be tracking them. And so I think it's almost self-fulfilling that the type of people in crypto are also the people that care the most about privacy, at least from what I've seen.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That meta, I'm kind of I don't believe everything I see. And then it was all these privacy things spun off at the same time. And I was like, that's interesting. Who's pulling the strings here? No, I don't know. Max, thank you for joining us, man. I sure appreciate it. I would love to get you on in another few months whenever there's some updates with Alpha Arcade and everything. So guys, Alpha Arcade is the third largest prediction market. I've personally used it myself. I'm not sponsored by Alpha Arcade or anything. I do work with ALGO, but I have used Alpha Arcade, and it was super, super easy to use. I did a parlay over the Super Bowl. Like I said, the only bad thing was I lost the parlay. And then I also did a safety one. I was trying to do I put like $40 on it, and I was going to give away if it won. And it
that was 40 to win. I think like 600 or something like that.
Yeah, because I did the odds, and I was like, okay, in 15% of all Super Bowls, there has been a safety. And so I was like, okay, this looks kind of good, but it didn't work out in my favor. It was kind of a boring Super Bowl, if I'm being honest. But hey, it's okay. My Cowboys are going to make it next year. So
definitely.
I've been saying that
every single year, but you never know. It could happen.
You never know. You never know, man. You never know. Well, Max, thank you for joining us, man.
Cool. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, guys, I hope y'all enjoyed that, having Max up here. A lot of interesting stuff they're building over at Algorand. Like I said, this was ALGO that I seen at the ETH Denver conference that I had a lot of fun at. I really did. Some people said that it was smaller than other years, but what do you expect? What I liked about the conference is that you didn't have any of the short timers there. Like if you were there, when ETH's $5,000, then it's like, okay, well then, you're doing good and all that stuff. But if ETH's down in the dumps, Vitalik's sitting there selling on everybody's head, it's like, you're here for the right reasons, right? And I'm just giving Vitalik a hard time. I know it's a normal thing, but let's take a look at the market, see what's going on. BTC made it over 64. Let's come over here, look a little low time frame and see how we are looking right here. So we're see, like we laid out earlier for BTC, never financial advice, but I'd like to see us get over this. But right now we're at this level. Let's see, right here. So you can see this level in the past has been, support, resistance, pretty much resistance all in here. So we'll see if it jumps up like that. We went over to CoinGlass earlier and we showed a lot of the liquidity sitting upwards at this level right here. So there's a ton of liquidity right here. Let's see if they go up and get it. Like I was saying earlier, guys, one of the sponsors of our live stream is Blofin. It's where I do all my trades. So never financial advice, but if you would like to join and see some of my trades, you can join right there. I had one last night that did pretty good initially. If you look, it says Pippin, and I was like, what is Pippin? I don't know anybody that knows what this thing is, yet it's up major when everything else is. But yeah, it did pretty decent and everything. But basically what I'm looking at, I'm all eyes on Nvidia's earnings tomorrow night. Nvidia's earnings are going to be coming out after hours, and I think that's going to really decide what happens in the stock market right here. And we know that when the stock market dips, typically it makes crypto dip typically, or as a result, we dip. And so when we're looking at something like BTC already down a lot, or, I don't know, we broke out of this. If we wanted to look at the 200-week simple moving average, it's currently sitting around 57K. If we look from more of a macro perspective, let's see how far back this chart goes. You can see this support level right here. If we zoom in on this, it was support all right here. It was resistance right here. It was support right here. And so this is right there at the 50K level. You can see we're already under last cycle's all-time high. So whenever we do eventually make a rebound, which I have no doubt in my mind that we will, this level is going to be a crucial one right here. Last cycle, you can see resistance there, support there, and now we have fell under that at around, what is that, 74K. But guys, I appreciate everyone for joining, for getting on the interview. If you don't follow us on X, make sure you do. Follow us over on X. And if you're over on YouTube, I have great appreciation for you as well there. We will actually, this live stream will be going up as a video with the Alpha Arcade and Lofty portion of it. But guys, every day, Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, we will be there. You can count on me to be there, keep you updated with everything going on. Tomorrow, we will have updates on the State of the Union address. I love you all. Thank you for coming.